So why do we procrastinate? We procrastinate because our brain, in very simple terms, is going, that looks really scary. This looks really safe. So writing this report for the boss, which I could completely screw up and get wrong and make a complete, idiot of myself, even though it's really important to me, feels terrifying. But this video of cats, that's hilarious. That's very comfortable.
The question is from Thinking Focus.
Hi, I'm Ricky.
Hi, I'm Paul.
And today the question is, why do I procrastinate when I have stuff to get done?
Oh, is that today? Oh no. I would have prepped it if I'd have done.
How long have you been storing that up for?
I've got to get the other one out as well. It's the other one that I love is, I used to think I was a terrible procrastinator, but it actually turns out I'm good at it.
And we can vouch for that.
Yes. Got that out of my system. We can go for it now. Procrastination is fascinating, isn't it? Because people get really hung up about it. And yet, to a certain extent, everybody does it. And, I think back, to people I've met before who will talk to you about procrastination as if it's discipline. You're just not disciplined enough. You should apply more willpower, or you need to manage your time better. And actually, it's got nothing to do with any of those things. It's not a time management issue. It's not about willpower. It's about emotions. So why do we procrastinate? We procrastinate because our brain, in very simple terms, is going, that looks really scary. This looks really safe. So writing this report for the boss, which I could completely screw up and get wrong and make a complete, idiot of myself, even though it's really important to me, feels terrifying. But this video of cats, that's hilarious. That's very comfortable. And it's a sort of representation of the fact that our brain is in the moment. It's not, brains aren't protecting us from long-term harm. They're protecting us from immediate harm.
Right.
And so the ability to, regulate and deal with that emotional conflict, that dissonance in our head, is where procrastination comes from, which is why some people are worse at it than others. Because if you're highly conscientious, if you're the kind of person who would be mortified about delivering a report late, the cost of not doing it becomes much harder than the cost of doing it and getting it wrong. Do you get what I mean? It's so there's like a calculation playing out in our head on everything we do.
So in that context then, what we're saying is that I'm worried about a particular task, the report for the boss or for the senior team or whatever. So I'm inadvertently or subconsciously trying to prevent myself from failing at that task. So I'm not stepping into that situation.
You're protecting yourself from the risk of this thing that is unpleasant. Worried might be one of the ways it's unpleasant, but it might be other reasons. It might be you feel like you can't do it, or the big one for me, I always think when I procrastinate, and it's taken, a long time 50 years of life to work this out. But when I procrastinate, it's often comes back to, I've agreed to do something and I don't know how to start.
And I think with something like a report, that's quite common, isn't it? When you've got to write something, particularly on a blank page.
Yeah.
It's almost like, well, how could you create a set of questions or a structure that you just kind of fill in a bit at a time, and all of a sudden you realise you've done 50% or 80% of it, and then it's tidying up around the edges and you don't realise you've done it. But it's that committing to starting that's kind of the big issue, isn't it?
Yeah, because that's the most uncomfortable bit. That's the bit I'm worried about, because in that moment, let's just say, I'm trying to think of something I've done recently. I'm going to write a report for a customer. So we've done a piece of work, I'm going to write a report for a customer. Weirdly, because I'm not great at writing reports, I'm not great at writing, the whole dyslexia thing plays out in my head. I convince myself I can't do it. I don't know where to start. If they said, could you come and talk about it? There's a bit of me that goes, I'm great at winging it. I quite happily do that. It feels less uncomfortable. But the writing it, so you build up this kind of barrier of where to start. And then I sit down in my office, and my office is a room full of distractions. There's a list on the table in front of me of easy things that I can do. Oh, check this and check that and reply to that quick email.
It'll only take me 2 minutes.
Yeah, it'll only take me 2 minutes. And there's lots of those that I can do. And then, I've got two screens. So one of them can have YouTube on it, and YouTube is distraction heaven. If you can't find something that's interesting to watch on YouTube, you're just not trying.
Yeah.
And so you've got on
Well,
one
you could look
hand-
at our YouTube channel once in a while.
trying to save myself here. But you know what I mean? It's like, so you've got this balance playing off of protecting myself in the moment and doing something that feels really safe against the risk. But then there's a long-term thing, is actually I can watch YouTube all day, the report still needs to be done because I have a client.
What I find really interesting, though, is, you talk about, I'm not a good writer, can't write, and that's kind of you playing out a self-talk that's not particularly helpful.
Yes.
But the other element to that is, if I came to you and said, I need to write a report, you'd go, right, let's think about the questions you need to ask. Let's think about the structure. You would play out the bones of that. You'd give me a skeleton to work within, and then I would then be able to fill that in. And if I presented it back to you, you go, well, you've kind of got that too early and that too late. So actually, you do know it. You've just got some doubt in your mind that's causing you to...
Yeah, I didn't say any of this was rational, by the way.
hold back. But it is interesting, because I know I've come to you on things like that before, and you've gone, well, let's break it down. Let's work it through. And how interesting it is that you don't do that for yourself.
Well, I do, but
when
I
you're up
have
against
to.
it.
Yeah. And that's the point. It's playing off this kind of emotional equation that your brain has at any point in time of going, at what point? And in some ways, I've become my own worst enemy, and I do what a lot of procrastinators do, which is I now leave things because I use the pressure, I use the equation in my favour. So I go, do you know what? I could do that now, but actually I'll feel the pressure more in 3 days' time, and I've convinced myself I'll therefore do better work. So I do something else now, and I wait till I'm under pressure. And sometimes that's not a helpful thing. And so often when I'm coaching people, what I'm doing, that example you used with me, is I'm using all the techniques that I know and do use for myself when I'm really stuck. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm not going to procrastinate in the moment if it feels uncomfortable. I'm gonna look at a task that feels slightly weird and find other things to do first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think it's a really interesting one, because I know at home, for example, we've got a leak, and I don't want to open that and it's in the kitchen ceiling, so yes. I know it's coming from the bathroom, and I go, as soon as I cut through that ceiling, I don't know what I'm going to find. I don't know what's going to need to happen to fix it, but if I leave it, it's going to get worse. I'm going to have the whole ceiling replaced. But I'm kind of going, the first time I put a hole through there and see what's going on, and I've now opened up the can of worms and I've got to deal with it. Whereas I'm kind of in this denial.
You're like me. If a new piece of tech turned up, though...
Oh, I'd open the box straight away. No issue.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Because the emotional risk to that of you against the benefits in the moment, the equation goes the other way.
Yeah,
So there's
absolutely.
no procrastination. You're going to do that one straight away. So I have this thing at home where... it's a classic example. We had 3 jobs to do at the weekend. One was sort out something to do with the TV. One was sort out something to do with something in the garden. One was go shopping.
TV won, didn't it?
TV got done instantly. Shopping got done when we run out of food. Yeah.
Yes.
I started the fence, but I haven't finished it. Because it's not because you could go, well, I didn't enjoy the fence thing. It's nothing to do with that. It's the TV thing. I knew exactly what I was doing. The shopping thing, I had to sit down and work out what we needed, but it's not beyond the wit of man. I knew how to do it. Actually, the thing in the garden, I'm not very good at that stuff. I don't naturally know how to do it. I'm going to have to work it out. And guess what? I started thinking, what if I do it wrong? What if I've got the wrong idea? I'm going to make an idiot of myself. Am I going to prove that I'm just, not a practical person? But the reality was, once I sat down and applied myself, it wasn't very hard at all.
Yeah.
But it's all those kind of emotional, what ifs and all that playing out in your head that goes, but I've got this other task over here to do. And that's why I think procrastination for me in the workplace is really fascinating, because you look at anybody's to-do list, there's a whole load of easy, important, but not life-critical type tasks that are very easy to stick in front of the killer project or the killer app or the thing that's going to make the biggest difference. And we come across that in the workplace all the time in the work we do, where somebody is avoiding the thing they know is going to make the biggest difference and quite happily justifying it with a whole load of stuff that on the surface is very relevant. It's not like it doesn't have to be done. So you think about some of the salespeople we work with, they're putting off the visiting a new customer or dealing with a difficult situation, but they're quite happily then going, but I've got to call all these people back and I've got to do this for them and there's a service thing over here. And they're kind of using all of that to save themselves from the uncomfortable feeling of the one or two things that probably will make a bigger difference in their role and their targets.
So how do we overcome that then? What strategies can we employ to ensure that we're focused on the things that make the biggest difference?
Well, I think firstly is to kind of accept we do it. So there's kind of a sort of general rule of thumb. Everyone procrastinates. About 20% of us procrastinate quite a lot.
Yeah.
It's a very common thing. So, because I think a lot of people I've met sort of work on the basis that they're part of a very elite group of procrastinators and that nobody else is doing it, and therefore they can't, it's almost, and it wraps in, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in some other podcasts we'll do in the future, it wraps into shame and sense of failure and all those kind of things that I'm procrastinating because I don't want to prove I can't do this.
Yeah.
So just recognise you do it, and then start with, what is it I'm trying to do? What's the point of this? Because if we've got absolute clarity of expectation, absolute clarity of purpose, it raises the reward of doing the task over the cost of doing the task. So you're changing the equation in your head.
Right.
So you go, if I really genuinely understand, I've got good goals, good clarity of purpose, understand what we're trying to do, I know why it's important, your brain will go, hang on a minute, while you're looking at cat videos.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're kind of doing this thing that just feels unpleasant and you've not really thought about where it fits in the bigger scheme of things, your brain might then skew to the cat videos.
Is there an element around getting some quick wins and momentum under your belt? So you talked about that kind of list of things that are urgent but not life-threatening, but actually if we get a sense of accomplishment, almost get on a roll of doing, then moving into that more complex thing. And I'm not saying do all of it, but maybe pick some of them and get some wins. Might that be a strategy we could do?
There's a fine line there, actually, because if you take the report example, one of the techniques I use a lot is to go, all right, let me create a goal that's safer. So instead of saying to myself, I'm writing a report for a customer, I go, I just need to create a report structure. So there's my task. So I'm creating momentum around the thing I'm putting off. That I think is very clever.
Right.
I think that kind of works for a lot of people because you're driving in small wins and chunks, and you're kind of reducing the discomfort of whatever the task is.
Yep.
So if you think about, maybe you've got to do cold calling or something like that. Really, most people hate that. Most people. But actually, if you kind of go, I always remember there's a technique, and I think I can't remember, it's one of the hypnotists, maybe someone like Paul McKenna, I remember hearing him talk about this, but I thought it was a really clever technique about defining a goal of how do I get 99 people to say no. Right, so you just run through 100 people with the goal of getting 99 to say no, and that's quite an easy task.
Yeah.
You can go very quickly, bang, 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 bang. At the end of it, you've got one that says yes. Well, that's what you were really aiming for. So there's those kind of things. The bit where I think is really interesting is a lot of people go, well, I'll tell you what I'll do all these little tasks because then I'm running, I'm flying, I've got some momentum, and that will lead into the big task. You go, no, it doesn't. It leads into more little tasks. I mean, that is...
I'll just do this one.
That's procrastination 101, isn't it? I mean, that's just like...
I'll just do this one.
Yeah. So I think it's that kind of, sort of stuff, because everybody has tasks that are important that we love, that we're at home with. You and I love multimedia stuff. So for me, it'll be the audio stuff. For you, it'll be the video stuff.
Yeah.
And you must have had times where you're sitting doing some video stuff, knowing in your heart of hearts, I really need to go and do that thing over there. But I'll just finish this video. Because I've done that with podcasts and some of the audio stuff we create.
Well, you end up in a perfectionist streak on your video or your audio because you go, oh, I could just make that. And that extra 1% better isn't more important than making that call or ringing that customer or whatever it might be, or the report for the customer or whatever it might be. And I suppose this is where something like the Eisenhower matrix can be really powerful for you, because it's going, what is urgent and important?
Yes.
So therefore, and that is lined up to that purpose and that goal that we're trying to achieve, and making some big decisions about stuff that actually, should somebody else be doing this? It's not in my sweet spot, or actually it's not my, the term we use a lot, highest value contribution. Is this your highest value contribution, doing this particular task, or could somebody else be doing it? Could we outsource it? Could the accountants be doing it? Could be, another department, another team be doing it? All of those questions kind of come in. That's, but we can do it and it'll only take us 2 minutes. Are we holding on to that because it stops us doing something else, or is it just because we enjoy the task?
I totally agree. And I think, you can take that to the sort of craziness stage where you've outsourced all the stuff you enjoy. And I wouldn't ever recommend that. There is nothing wrong with going, a portion of this job, maybe I'm not doing my highest value, but I'm in my zone, it's really comfortable, it's helping me focus and relax and enjoy the job, because you need a portion of that.
Yep.
Which is why you and I have had a debate about there's some things that I could easily give up, but this is the bit I love. I want to do some of these stuff. But you then have to be really honest with yourself and going, at what point does that become an excuse for not doing important stuff?
Yeah.
The other thing I always think about in terms of overcoming procrastination is about breaking stuff up, chunking big jobs down into little tasks. So you have lots of wins and lots of milestones, like you say, and then giving yourself rewards as you've done it. So actually going, do you know what? I'm going to do this bit, and I'm not going to leap into the next bit. I'm going to then go for a walk, or I'm going to do something else. I'm going to do something that is much more attuned to feeling comfortable for me.
But there is some research, isn't there, that more regular breaks is better than a long sustained period, then get up. Because my big weakness is I just keep going at my desk because I can and it's easy, and stepping away from my desk becomes almost, I feel, but I've still got stuff to do. So not necessarily working on the right stuff, but or
luckily my coffee addiction has stopped me doing that. So
well, I have a dog, as you know, and whenever I finish a Teams call and say, goodbye or whatever, the dog appears at the door because he knows that's biscuit time. He knows I'm going to make a cup of coffee. He's trained me to go down and make a drink and give him a treat.
So but you're right. There's lots of research that sort of indicates that breaking jobs into smaller chunks, working for a bit, then taking a break. And I think that I can never remember the numbers. I think it's about like 40 minutes is the peak time, 40 or 50 minutes. Although I've seen stuff that talks about 25 and then 5-minute breaks. But that, heightens attention, heightens focus, makes us more productive. So there's lots of research in that. And those techniques, again, help with procrastination. Because if you've got a big job that you're putting off that you think is going to take a long time and is going to take a lot of effort, actually going, this is not a big job. I'm doing 40 minutes of it.
Yeah.
And at the end of 40 minutes, wherever I am, I can stop, I can take the dog for a walk, I can put the kettle on, I can do something else, I can flick through my emails, that's fine. And then I think the last one for me in terms of how do you deal with procrastination is work out what your distractors are. If YouTube is your thing, get off YouTube. I found that if I'm working on something really difficult, and not even difficult in terms of taxing, and difficult in terms of, for whatever reason, I'm emotionally going, I don't want to do this. This is really scary. Actually, for me now, taking a pen and paper or pencil and paper in my big pad and going out of my office and going somewhere else, So
you're changing the state, essentially.
Changing the state, but also it's that I'm removing the distractions, because most of my distractions are in my office, because that's where all the things I need are.
Yeah.
So if I go and sit, even if I, in the summer, go and sit in the garden with a big sheet of paper and do a mind map, I'm now going, and actually, after the point I've done the mind map, I've got a structure, which means I now know what I'm doing, and I can come back and write. So I've done the really unpleasant thing by removing the distractions.
And I think you said something earlier about, chunking it down, particularly around the report example. And that reminded me of Brene Brown. She talks about this concept of a shitty first draft.
Yes.
That says it's okay to create a substandard piece of work first time. It's not the finished article. What we're saying is, here's my thinking. Am I on the right track? Let's review that and then let's polish it up as we go.
And it's a perfect example of she's reducing the emotional risk.
Correct.
Because actually, is my confidence that I can write a shitty first draft high? Yes. I've done that loads of times.
But also, and I think that reducing the pressure piece is really important, because to create a report that ticks all the boxes feels like a really high bar.
Especially from a blank sheet of paper.
But actually creating something somebody could critique and help and give feedback. And of course, what's that going to do? It's going to sharpen your skills, and your shitty first draft next time is going to be that bit better.
Yeah. And I think that for me, is those techniques. It's breaking it down into chunks. It's lowering the pressure, accepting that, bring that pressure down on yourself by setting that easier goal. And I think the other side to it is kind of upping the pressure on yourself to create pseudo deadlines. So instead of going, I've got to deliver this report next week, I've got to do a shitty first draft, lower risk, but I've got to do it by Monday.
Yeah.
And then on Monday, I set a new goal for Wednesday, which is second draft or review draft, so you're breaking it down.
But you can easily add pressure to that, though, by saying, right, I need to create this so Paul can review it.
Yes.
And line Paul up for that, because out of respect for your diary, I need to fit in a particular slot. And therefore, and manage your expectations that says, this is a shitty first draft.
And that's made me think of something. One of the really clever things with that is that idea of public commitment to our goals.
Yes.
Enforces us to do it. So actually getting somebody else involved or telling them, I'm going to get you this by this day, then again will change our psychological state and make us more likely to do it.
And I think it's managing that expectation that says it isn't perfect.
Yeah.
It's never going to be perfect. What it is going to be is my best work for that timeline that I've got, which outlines my thoughts. Together we will work out what's the good, the bad and the ugly, what we're going to drop out, what we need to add more of, what we need to change, and iterate accordingly. And
that's, I think, just to round it off, because that sounds like we're about to get into perfectionism, and I think that's a really good point to say that should be one of our future podcasts, because these things are so tied in together. Perfectionism, that high standardness that sometimes we have, then comes back to procrastination.
Causing procrastination. So, well, I can't reach that bar yet, and I don't know how I'm going to do it, and I don't know where to start. And no, I totally agree. No.
So procrastination, just to round it off, to answer your question, why do you procrastinate? Well, because we all do, and it's because whatever it is that you're trying to put off for the future, for some reason that you may not fully understand, is causing some emotional discomfort. It might be fear, it might be the standards are too high, it might be you don't like writing stuff for the boss because you think you're going to get it wrong, it might be self-esteem that you don't think you're good enough. But one of those things is playing out, and your brain is going, well, just go and do this safe thing over here instead first.
It reminds me of a recent conversation where we've got some work to go and do for a client in Madrid in October. It's my wife's birthday in October, and I dropped it out where the friends around that I might be away for a birthday. And she says, how long have you known? And I said, 2 or 3 weeks. Why haven't you said anything? And I went, because I was worried about what you were going to say. So I'd procrastinated sharing something.
To be fair, I know lots of techniques for dealing with procrastination, but fear of your wife, I think that is justified.
Next time on The Question Is.
But it's almost as if my father-in-law has read a book somewhere recently that goes, but you're 74, Tony, ergo you can't do this anymore. And he's living to that belief that he's now created where he can't do that anymore. And actually, he probably does have the ability, but he doesn't have the confidence.
To find out how Thinking Focus can unlock the potential within your organisation, go to www.thinkingfocus.com where you'll discover more about the work we do, helping our clients increase productivity and enable change.